Hi, Gene Monterastelli here, the editor of tappingqanda.com. The video that you are about to watch is a conversation that was a part of this year's 24 Hours of Tapping. The 24 Hours of Tapping is a fundraiser for the amazing work that is done by the Peaceful Heart Network. The Peaceful Heart Network has brought tapping to migrants, refugees, prisoners, and the underprivileged in over 30 countries all over the world. As you watch this video, if you learned something, if you were touched by it, if you were inspired by it, the easiest way to say thank you is to support the work of the Peaceful Heart Network. To do that, all you need to do is go to 24hoursoftapping.com/support. And as you look in the description and the first comment down below, you will see a direct link to that. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Next up, we have Jackie Viramontez. Jackie is a Master Level EFT Trainer and author who teaches the next generation of practitioners how to blend trauma-informed tapping with inner child work and EMDR-based therapies. Please welcome to the virtual stage of the 24 Hours of Tapping, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. How you doing?
So good. Probably more energized than you, but it's good to be here.
That's okay.
We're so on and on.
You were right before you jumped on here. You were taking care of exactly what you needed to be taking care of. So we are glad that you are here and joining us. And so I think to, start the conversation about tapping for the difficulties of high risk birth, would you just be willing to just kind of talk about what the last year of your life looked like and what that particular experience was?
Yeah, I'm like, well, right now I'm like checking to make sure there's not milk on my shirt. So that's been the last year of my life. Jean knows I was WhatsApping saying I'm nursing my daughter, but the last year I have a 4-month-old. She should be a 5-month-old because she was 3 weeks late. And I have a 3.5-year-old too. So the last year of my life has really been moving through my second pregnancy. And I've always loved being pregnant, but my postpartum with my son was really, really bad. And anyone who's on this call knows when you have tons of resources, it's a little bit easier for a perfectionist, high achieving person to beat themselves up. Why am I feeling so depressed? Why am I feeling so anxious when I have tapping, when I have all these tools that other people whose moms who seem to be thriving don't have? So that pregnancy, while physically I felt great, for the most part, we can get into it, there was a lot of fear of going back into that postpartum depression. And I've been feeling so good and so myself. So that's why I suggested tapping on birth, tapping on pregnancy as the topic, because just what I was able to work through to have a totally different postpartum was really life-changing and postpartum changing. So that's the last year of my life, raising a little baby, training my students. I train people in EFT. So it's amazing to keep being a constant guinea pig for myself and then teaching it to others. And so,
well, I mean, there are less complicated ways to be a guinea pig on yourself.
I know. I feel like I attract the things. I'm like, I got to go
there.
Through
You go.
So I can pull other people out.
Give me the lesson so I can teach it. So then so going into the second birth and recognizing how hard the first one was there game planning? Was there thinking? Like what did, because you describe, I know how you described yourself, and I know you to be that sort of person where it's just like, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it right because you're going to do it right. What did you think doing it right was going to look like? Then what did it actually look like?
And just to clarify, doing it right, the pregnancy part, the birth part, just so
the part that you were concerned about, that was because the first time was hard, because you had that lived experience. I'm sure that informed your preparation, your mental work, the work you were doing, the way you communicated, the people you had around you, like to make the experience better after an experience that was less good.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people here probably know about hypnobirthing, which is really, you're just like soaking your mind in the positive reality you want. So when it comes to hypnobirthing, you're like really envisioning what your birth looks like. For me, I had a great birth, that those hours you're birthing. I was really picturing the postpartum. So anytime they were talking about birth, I was looking at like, what do I look like? What is my relationship with my husband look like? Is there, instead of picturing an ideal birth, which I did, I'm picturing that ideal postpartum of how I'm interacting with my child, how I feel for my child, like
Yeah.
feeling love in my heart for my child from day one versus 8 months later with my son. So I was really picturing that. And with hypnobirthing, it's all about affirmations. But I think what all tappers love is we know that affirmations are so powerful if they're true. Like I always teach students, tapping is the truth. So if
Yep.
saying, I am protected by God, it's easy and joyful, but you know it wasn't easy and joyful, it's a lie. So we have to
Right.
tap on what really comes up. So I would listen to the hypnobirthing every day, all the time. But then whenever there was an affirmation where I could just feel that it didn't feel true, with every cell of my body, I'm like,
Yeah.
I would work on that. I almost like have I always have Post-its everywhere. I'd have Post-its, and then I'd work through what are those deeper truths that are making me not be able to feel trusting, not be able to feel like it's going to be loving, not feel like I'm going to enjoy it or be surrendered. So that's what a lot of the work looked like, is looking at what did I want? And anyone could do this. Like you
Right.
all might not be giving birth. Most of you aren't pregnant or giving birth anytime.
I am
What
not at
are
this
you
moment.
birthing?
No.
You're birthing a book, you're birthing an online course. What do you want it to feel like? And then writing down those yes buts in those tail enders, and then doing the work to tap on it, which obviously is not shallow work. It led to a lot of deeper traumas of why I was not able to feel surrendered, why I was not able to trust, why I was not letting myself get my hopes up again. And I think any trauma survivor knows it's hard to get your hopes up when you've
Right.
been disappointed. So there's a lot of deeper work to do there that we could get into. But that's what it looked like as an overview. And then I also
Yeah.
surrounded myself with, I have my practitioner who does EMDR and EFT. And for anyone who doesn't know the bigger context, I was setting up for a home birth. So we'll get into how my baby was breached.
Yeah.
And so I had my whole home birth team, my midwives, who I call like my shamans, my healing goddess shamans, who really, really helped me move into a place of deep trust, even though we did, as we'll get into, have a little breech scare and have a baby who's 3 weeks late, which isn't
Yeah.
really.
Well, I mean, just like, why don't you just like we can step right into it if you'd like.
Yeah. Which part, Gene?
Well, the details, I mean, you alluded to the details that we're going to get to. Why don't we get to the details, and then we can
Okay.
kind of talk around and the tools and the approach that you used as, so I think you did a really lovely job of setting the table of going into that particular thing. And I don't think something truer has been said today in this about how we tap on the truth, because, even if we don't want to admit it, our subconscious mind is going to make sure it shows up. Like that old debate, should I tap on positive phrases or negative phrases? It does not matter, because the emotional truth is going to speak itself. Because if I say a positive phrase that my subconscious mind does not believe, it will not abide. It's going to show up. It's going to poke back, and I'm going to get a chance to tune into that particular piece of it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no such thing as negative or positive emotions. It just, does it support your ideal
Right.
future, or does it not support it? And we want to tap away what doesn't support it. And birthing does nothing more than really show you what's not supporting you physically, mentally, emotionally. So yeah, I even wrote down like the 10 different avenues of tapping on birth, especially if there's like doulas out there, birth workers, or just if you're literally birthing anything into the world, these like 10 different angles I was able to explore that you could teach someone to explore. So
what were, just out of curiosity, what were a couple of those, if you can remember them off the top of your head?
Totally. Well, beyond looking at what your ideal is and then tapping on those yes buts, those deeper truths that aren't supportive, is for me one of the most powerful things was like tuning into what well, one, there's two things. One, tuning into what my fear in my body was saying, and I'll guide through that. And then tuning into my baby. And you have kids, right? So you can actually, you have kids, right?
I do not.
Oh, you don't? For some reason I thought your sister.
No, I have a Roomba and 2 houseplants.
But
Same
you
thing.
know, tune into them and see what message they have to share with
That's
you.
right.
So those are the two big things. So I'll share more in
Yes,
depth.
please.
So when about 4 or 5 weeks before my due date, which was supposed to be February 18th, which is the exact same due date as my son, 3.5 years earlier. I went into the midwife's yurt, you know, of course, and they're feeling the baby, and it's like that kind of like nauseating moment where they're like feeling a little extra too long, and they're like, yeah, we think the feet are down, which you do not want to birth a baby with feet down. And typically, if you're doing a home birth, you can't do a home birth if the feet are down. So it means it's breech. So they're very spiritual women, and they said, usually when a baby's breech, they're trying to share something with you. Maybe they're trying to communicate something, like maybe you're not ready. So of course, that's very triggering to hear as a type A person, and I attract a lot of type A students. It's super triggering to hear. So it makes the gut thing that came up was, oh no, it's my fault.
Mm.
So I think as tappers, it's like when you're trying to birth something into the world and something happens where it is stuck, literally. Like my baby's stuck, feet down. Like usually babies don't come out naturally if their feet down. So when you're writing that book and something's stuck, it's like, oh, why is it stuck? What is it telling you? And they would voice memo me throughout the week being like, have you had time to tune into the baby and see what they're saying? And all I kept hearing in my head, Kristen, you were saying, it's like, what's the meaning you're making under that?
Mm-hmm.
The meaning was, it's my fault. It's my fault.
Mm.
It's my fault. And of course I tapped on that as a tapper, but then what you can do with that meaning is like, how old is this feeling? And I really teach inner child work tapping, of tuning in and saying, how old is this? I immediately saw this 5-year-old version of me. Just like when I bled anyone, they see this younger version of themselves going, oh, it's my fault. And backstory is when I was 5 is when my brother died in it was a sudden accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was my fault because I was there and I didn't stop it.
Right.
So sorry to everyone, but we're going there today.
Yep.
I've obviously worked on his death a million times, but what I love to tell people is your body will help you work on something when you're ready, and nothing like bringing a new person into the world makes you have to expand. And I was ready to address another layer, basically. And it was
Right.
another layer of, oh my gosh, this meaning I've carried of when something doesn't go to my plan, it means it's my fault. And being able to look at that little girl and really have a reckoning of tapping, for the first time, it was a really profound shift of that belief, right? That
Mm-hmm.
lie, it's your fault, actually dissipated for the first time. And it's amazing. I'd worked on it a million times and thought it shifted, and maybe it did in ways, but it really shifted of going, I believe I'm a spiritual person, and I believe we all come in with a plan. It's like, it was no one's fault. It was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
It was his plan all along to leave the planet young. And I literally now, when I picture his death, really see like it was no one's fault. It was the plan. We all signed up for it in that soul contract level, part of the plan. And when I went into the ultrasound at the doctor's to confirm the breech, put the jelly on, Oh, and I have to backtrack. So first here is, what's the meaning you're making? Go tap on your inner child. But if you ever birth something, go talk to that thing. So I talked to my daughter, my daughter Ellie, tuned into her and tapped as I tuned into her and said, all right, the midwives want me to know. What are you trying to tell me? And she said this. It just kept coming. It's not your fault. It's not about you, Mom. Not about you, Mom. So I would like urge anyone who's even pregnant or literally pregnant with an idea, tune in and say, hey, why are you stuck? Like, what are you trying to say to me? And she had said, it's not your fault. A week later, I tuned into my inner child and it was like, oh, it's not your fault. So it was this amazing parallel, a few days later going for the breech. breech confirmation, put the ultrasound on. She's like, oh, perfect, you're all good. Walked out of the room. My husband and I were like, did they just say all good, head down? Because you know, sometimes they are at
Right.
doctors. We're like, wait, whoa, not breech, not breech. So she had turned in those 2 days after the work. And we were inevitably able to safely deliver a head down baby at home in the matter of a few hours. So it was amazing.
And
So we could
so
unpack anything there, but it was
yeah,
really
yeah,
profound. Yeah, for
yeah.
me.
So I'm just kind of curious, like you know, it's easy to say I tuned into my inner child and it. Like practically what does an experience look like for you? Because, anytime we're doing, like, I can sometimes do parts work with my inner child, and one time he shows up like 5 and one time he shows up like a dinosaur. Like the consistency, even if I'm working with a similar part, isn't the same. So this is not descriptive, but I would love to hear. I mean, this is not prescriptive, this is descriptive. Like, when you decided that part of the process was I needed to tune into this thing I was giving birth to,
Mhm.
what how did you engage with that? What was that process like?
Yeah. It's always best when you're already feeling it. So for me, and what I teach these 4 C's actually is what I call it. So tuning in first, like connecting. So connecting is the first C, and consent. So you're really connecting to the feeling of like, am I ready to go there? So it's that trauma informed consent piece of, am I ready to go there?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm a visual person. I
Mm-hmm.
teach, we're all different. So if you're a sensing person, it's tuning into like, where is it in your body? So when I had this deep, like visceral sinking in my chest, wherever it shows up for you, you tune into that feeling.
Yeah.
If it's visually, like you're kind of almost seeing someone go like, this is your fault. Like the midwives, you're kind of seeing that. So whatever you process, whether you're seeing it, sensing it, if you need to say it out loud, voice memo it and hear it, like, it's your fault, just to help you tune into that feeling. And then it's like, okay, let's really connect. Is how old is this? Sometimes I just ask, is this familiar? And sometimes I'll just tap and ask. So we like to think with our mind, but tapping's beautiful when it's embodied. So have I felt this before? How old is this? And for me, that's where the deeper answer comes. Like, how old is this? When have I felt this before? Who was I with? Where was I? Really going through those, like, where, when, what was happening? What was I seeing? How old was I? What was I blaming myself for? So I love using tapping and asking. And then, oh, I see myself on the side of the street. So for me, I'm very visual, so I'm seeing it. Some other
Yeah.
people might sense it. And then I take that girl, and it's the consent of, do you want to talk here or do you want to talk somewhere else? So for her, she wanted to talk right there, where it happened. And I almost like freeze the scene. Um, and we just talked. I really took time to connect. I really teach that, is like, if you don't connect, it's not going to be as deep. So I took time of like, what is she wearing? Where is she sitting? Is she on the curb of the street? Is she? And I'm tapping and asking myself until I can really see her outfit, see her little pigtails. So that's really real. And that way I know I'm not making it up in my head. I'm really connecting to what is actually happening. And then, okay, so the connection part could take like 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
then you start to tune into their energy of like, how are they feeling? Like, does she have this same sinking in her chest? Or is it different? I never heard the term meta feelings until the last
Yeah.
talk we
So good. Okay. You and I are in a club together. Awesomeness.
had. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm a trainer. I've never heard this. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I was today
So
years old.
that's tuning into me. Is you don't just go, oh, it's this 5-year-old, and then let me talk to them, and you're still above the neck. It's like, I want it so embodied, where you are in like you are fully in your body, seeing where the energy is held on their body, where they're like, I'll always ask this to students, like, what is their body language? Where is the energy in their body? Where is it fear? Is it something else? Until you can really see, like, that child. And then we move to the second C, which is connection. We so quickly want to jump to correction. It's
Yeah.
going to be okay. You're going to be strong. You're going to help so many people because of this trauma. You know, it makes you a better person. And it's bypassing the healing, which is compassion. So then I spend the time of like, oh my gosh, I get it. I see you. It makes sense. Those are the mantras I teach people. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Of course you feel this way. And that's what it really looked like, is just to sit with that inner child of mine who just saw this really traumatic scene and just going, it makes sense that you feel this way. You can feel this way for as long as you want. And then you can move to the third C of like curiosity, which
Yeah.
is you ask questions. What do you need? How are you
Yep.
feeling? What are you afraid of? And that's where she got to say, like, I could have stopped it.
Yep.
And it's like, that makes sense that you think you could have stopped it. And you don't go to correction. That's like the
Yep.
biggest thing I teach
Yeah.
people is like, you want to jump to it. That
Yeah.
dysregulated part wants to jump to regulation, to correction. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't do it. Yeah, of course you wanted to save him. Of course you think you could have stopped it. Of course you
Yeah.
think you could have stopped God's plan, you powerful 5-year-old you. And then
And
it's moving to really bringing closure for them. Yeah.
well,
I
and
laugh,
so
but
like,
it can be like,
yeah. So there's a couple of pieces inside of that. Like, I don't use the exact same vocabulary. My process of doing inner child work is something very, very similar. And there's a couple of things that I love in what you're doing inside of there. Um, Number one, I love stepping into something with a sense of curiosity and just trying to figure out what's going on, not having a plan, not having an agenda. Um, the consent piece is so key because like consent is key, full stop. In every context, everywhere. I love that we're starting to live in an age of affirmative consent. That's the best thing ever.
yeah.
And when we're dealing with an inner child part,
Mhm.
it is the part of us, it is the experience of us, for most of us, that has the single least amount of agency. And so it's the part that has had the opportunity to experience consent the least. And and so for me, when I'm actually engaging that particular piece of it, not only asking for consent, I'm like giving it permission to think, feel, and believe anything it wants,
Mhm.
and to have permission not to know what to think, feel, or believe. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes when we're in a circumstance where we don't have agency, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden we have agency, we're convinced, well, I have agency, I have to have the answer right now.
Yeah.
And just holding that particular space of just saying like, and like the slowness of the process, you'll have find no bigger fan of me than the slowness of that particular process. Like that's the single biggest difference in me and a practitioner in the last 7 years is the rate in which I do everything. And again, when we're
Mhm.
stepping into something like inner child work, it gets multiplied in all of the stuff. And so
Yeah.
the way that you're laying it out in that way, like
Mhm.
I mean, like if I'm looking at it from the outside, it's a
Mhm.
process of honor.
It's
You know,
honoring them. Because
yeah,
these little kids inside us deserve medals of honor, and sometimes
yeah.
we do that. But
Yeah,
the trauma of
mine
being a
get
child is not having any control,
yeah,
and being told, "No, no, everyone's fine," when your little empath inner child knows no one's fine. It's like, not only is control taken from you, like any trauma survivor knows you don't have control, you lose agency, as you said, and you're giving that power back. So, like, even if the inner child's confused, or even
yeah.
if they're like, "You're trying to fix me," you don't try to fix that feeling. You
That's
go,
right.
"Oh, of course you think I'm trying to fix you. I totally get it. I get it more than anyone," which is a
Yeah,
powerful thing to say to yourself because you do get it more than anyone because it's you.
yeah,
It's like, "Oh man, I get it." And it's just crazy to see how quickly we try to jump to fix the feelings. Like, I
yeah.
love following parenting accounts before I was a parent. I don't know if you know Dr. Becky, but it's like Dr. Becky is a child psychologist, and she says kids aren't afraid of big feelings, they're afraid of being alone with them. So it's like we take that into the inner child work of like, they're not afraid of being this scared. They're afraid that they're
Right.
the only one feeling it. So you're just going, I get it. We can feel this way as long as you want. I get it. Of course. And it's just that's where the shift happens. There's all this happy tapping out there on YouTube where it's like, you're going to be fine. You're
Right.
powerful. It's like just saying, of course. The
Yeah.
kid's like, oh, they're kind of shocked. Like the inner child's like, whoa, I didn't expect you to try to not fix me. And then suddenly they're like, okay, can we go play now? And it's like the
Yeah.
inner child shifts and you're like, oh, I didn't have to say something wise. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, I moved on now. It's like tapping
Yeah.
with a kid. You're like, oh, are they really done after half a round? You're like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's like playing keep away with a child. The moment that you are disinterested in playing the game of keep away, the game's gone, so they just surrender the thing. And
mhm.
so just going, you don't have to tell me. We're in no rush, whatever it is. And it's like, okay. And it just kind of like gives it up in that particular moment because it has been conditioned.
Validated,
Yeah, it's been
which is,
conditioned for fight.
yeah.
And to eliminate that and go, you're right. I understand that, you know?
Yeah. And I have this inner child workshop. And what I like about it is it goes through each stage of development. And there is
Mhm.
developmentally, when you're 3 to 5, there is this need to be in control. Like, it's why it's the no, like, no, it's mine. Or 2 to 3. So it's like when you know what the stage of development is, you can also hold space for them in that way of like, yeah, what do you want to do? We can be here as long as you want. You're calling the shots. And for a 5, I just turned 5. So it's really more in that 4 stage of development.
Mhm.
It's like that's what she needed. She didn't need these adults saying, oh, everything happens for a reason. You're like,
Right.
um, and then what's so beautiful with the parallel, especially if anyone's listening and does work with birth or is pregnant, when you tune into your own child in your womb, whether they're a future child, a spirit baby you haven't conceived yet, or you're about to give birth days from now, it's the same thing. Like that, it's almost like this eye roll girl in my womb is like, stop trying to control me. Like it was a sense of like, stop trying to turn me, like
Mhm.
stop trying to control me. Like this isn't about you. I will do this on my terms. And I'm sure her personality will be a little rebellious girl if she's anything
Mhm.
like me. So she's like, this is on my terms, was the clear message I got from her. And I tuned in a very similar way of just holding space, seeing if she wanted me to. And that's something to note too, is that consent part is a lot of times people say, well, my inner child doesn't want to talk to me. They're like, oh, get away. It's like, great. They
Right.
trust you enough to say no.
Yeah.
And they trust that you're going to respect that. So respect that and then come back again, come back again, come back again. Um,
And
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 maybe
and
the 10th
and
time they'll open up to you.
yeah, and that can't be a game. You
No.
can't pretend to be going, "You can do whatever you want." Like, when we're offering consent to a part, like, we need to honestly and genuinely be offering consent to that part because it's gonna see through the fact it's a charade where I'm just like, "I'm just saying the thing because I know I can trick this little thing into doing that thing for me." And, like, that's the exact opposite of the relationship that you're trying to establish with being an inner child or any other part that you're engaging with in that way that's a part of you
Yeah.
is that you really need to be negotiating as an honest broker with that particular part.
No agenda. Yeah, I was an 8th
Yeah,
grade teacher for 1 year. It was a teaching fellowship, but I trained this, school psychologist, and it's like, nothing like a kid can see right through your BS. They
absolutely.
can see through it, and she said she had an 8th grader because 8th graders, like, know exactly what you're doing. Like
Yeah,
"Are
they're
you
the
all
best.
psychic? Is every single one of you psychic?" But she had a girl who'd come to her therapy, the school psychology room, every day because mandatory. And she'd just sit there and she'd be like, "You want to talk?" And she'd be like, "No." And she said it lasted for 3 months. So she shared this to my whole EFT
Yep.
for kids. It was like everyone was there. And it was so good that she shared it because everyone's like, but I want my kid to get better. I want them to open up. I wish they would tap. Um, and she was like, she came for months.
Yeah.
And that 3rd month, she was like, so like, what do other kids talk about? She asked a question. And then this
Yeah.
2 weeks later, she was like, "Brrr," but it took 3 months of building that trust of consent, that when she was consenting of, yes, I do want to open up, it was so real versus if the therapist had each day tried to force her to talk. And she's like, I'm here. Yeah, just chill, eat your lunch, eat your snack. And it built that trust. And we have to do the same thing to our inner child because we were children. And
Yeah.
if you're doing birth work, that's a child in your womb, whether they're conceived or not yet. And they need that same level of respect.
20 years ago, I was working with a youth group, and there was a kid that showed up and sat in the back and crossed their arms for 6 months.
Mhm.
And these over anxious volunteers wanted to engage. And I'm like, no, she's in the room. She chose to be here,
Mhm.
and she's choosing to be like that. That's the choice.
Yeah.
And we can
Mhm.
make an invitation, but that's it. Like, that's the choice. And eventually engagement happened exactly like the story you're telling, but
Mhm.
it required the ability, like, to recognize, like, and I think part of the reason for me why I struggle with that less is because when I remember this very vividly, when I was 6 years old, I was very annoyed I did not get to vote in the presidential election. And my mother turned to me and said, "Oh, you're doing an election at school." I'm like, "That's not a real election. That's a game for the students." And like the quality of my political views of a 6-year-old is immaterial. But like that was the sense of like I still can
Yeah.
feel what it's like to be in my body at that age and going, no, I know how this is supposed to go.
Yes.
And just being able to engage in that particular level just makes it the engagement such a different thing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
My
I was
friend,
that kid going to
yeah,
being told to go to therapy since 5 years old,
yeah,
um, and I was the kid not wanting to do it. So I think that's why I have that trust too, is like, I'm like, guys, me, the one who taps 4 times a day, who
yeah,
listens to 24 hours of tapping, was the kid who refused to go to therapy. So it's just like a deeper level of trust, like a bigger picture of, if you just allow it now, there'll be so
yeah,
much fruit later versus if someone had forced me, if my mom had forced me, I probably wouldn't be doing this work now. So she trusted me. It's like we have to trust in the bigger picture, which is, I mean, birth for me, the whole story is, or when I
yeah,
train doulas or birth midwives, it's like, or people who work with kids, it's like the best energy, kids feel your energy. It's like, it has to just be trust. Like, I trust you. I trust you'll come to me when you're ready. Um, and that moves way more mountains than like your ego getting to be like, they tapped with me. They're going to heal more from them knowing you trust and respect them, whether it's, yeah,
my,
yeah.
yeah. My friend Catherine Poole, who's medical intuitive, in a workshop one time said, "It's a fully grown soul that just happens to be in a tiny body."
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that was the moment for me, just as like from like thinking as a functioning adult about it. It's like, oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Now it doesn't have the cognitive ability of a full grown adult, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it credit for having a full grown soul inside of it. And the body just hasn't caught up to it yet. Okay. That's a different way to engage with that particular piece of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so good. They might be older than you on a lifetime scale, if you believe in that.
And
So
and so
I know we're talking about high risk birth, but I think this is so important because literally whatever, it's like we have to know that that baby has a bigger plan. It's
mhm,
not about us. It's no fault to you. It's like they are a fully grown soul in your womb, and it's like respecting their timing. And that was really the greater lesson whenever you work with kid, is like trusting that you're not in control of them. And a high risk birth, it's trusting you're not in control. I could do all the hypnobirthing in the world and work through all my trauma and still have to end up going to the hospital and getting a C-section. And that's one of the other things to tap on is,
yeah,
can you feel in your power even if it doesn't go to your plan? So that was a lot of the work that I teach, or a lot of the work I had to do, of let me envision my worst case scenario, um, and get to a place where I can feel like I'm still my whole, worthy, not blaming myself, empowered, peaceful self, even if it's not the circumstance I would have chose, which is also the best of tapping is can't control the
Yeah.
situation. You control how you feel about it. So yes, I want to give birth at home, but if it's that C-section, which so many beautiful babies, probably many of people watching at C-sections, it's like, yeah, it's just trusting that's how the baby wants to come. It's maybe safer for them that way. There's a bigger plan. So that was a lot of the work of coming into a place of trust. And again, that looks like writing out the worst case scenario and tapping away for me the fear, is the fear of, because of that early trauma, I had a lot of bad connotations with hospitals. So tapping through that until I could picture a hospital room and not have it put me into a state of fight or flight. Like we're giving birth here. It's not a connotation of death, which was, my earliest connotations. So really helping myself feel the way I wanted to feel no matter what the situation was. And that's true power. That's true emotional freedom technique.
And I think what's interesting is sometimes when the stakes are higher and the negative consequences are clearer, that becomes a focusing thing. Because what you're talking about here, like this being able to be comfortable in what I can control, and I am navigating a planet with 8 billion people who have free will and are fickle and are unpredictable and are inconsistent. Like, I'm not going to be in a circumstance where I'm ever in control. And, you're talking about earlier, like this idea of giving birth of anything into the world. I can want to control the way my product launch goes. I'm going to want to control the way my finding the relationship of my life goes, wanting to control the way. And it's following its fool's errand to think that I'm going to control everything inside of any of this, and that's just going to make it harder. And so, for even the smaller things, giving ourselves permission to recognize the things that we control and recognizing the things that we don't control as we engage with all of that.
I love writing and tapping, like doing both.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can just make a T chart. I did this in the birth. It reminded me, you saying that, like T chart. Okay, what can I control? What can't I control? Where the baby is born, when she's born, how long I'm pushing, how long it takes, the due date, other people, write it out. Write out what you can control. And then I love to tell people, like, circle the ones that are so triggering, tap on those first. And so those things you can't control are just like neutral. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't control it. My daughter taught me, can't control the due date. Due date February 18th, born on March 6th.
I was due November 30th. I was born January 2nd.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's what your sister was saying. Wow. So
Oh,
your
yeah,
mom.
no, yeah, and no. My mother has already shown up in the chat box and said, "What were you trying to communicate?" And yeah, the thing that my father realized I was trying to communicate was I was not going to be a tax credit in 1973 because I was born on January 2nd, so I was not a dependent for 1973.
No. Okay, now I see the chat. Oh, that's amazing. Well, good on you. What, Miss
Yep.
Monterastelli?
Monterastelli, yeah. Mom's hanging out in the chat box because she's
I
good like
love
that.
it. What were you trying to say? Well, clearly you're like, I'm in control here.
The way I move through the world is I'm going to get there when I get there. I was carried everywhere in warm fluid and had a constant supply of food. We are in no rush.
Totally, no rush. And it's like, wow, even my husband said, he did a lot of inner work too on his fears. Because he comes from a family of really high risk births. So when you talk about connotations, he was actually born blue with the cord around his neck. So that was part of his story to work through. His sister was almost, then his sister's births were always really, people just say everyone was like really scared. So there was never a birth that just was beautiful. It always had all of this drama and trauma around it. So he had to do a lot of work too. And we were doing it at the same time. I'm really thankful that he's willing to go there. But yeah, working through those connotations. And then I'm really lucky to say she did come like exactly
Yeah.
how I pictured it. But I was at a place where that didn't mean anything about me. It's
Yeah.
not because I did all the work. You know, if
Right.
you had a really traumatic birth and you're listening, it's not because you didn't do the things. That's how the baby was supposed to be born. Um, so I always like to say that too. It's like things don't go our way when we do the work. We feel the way we want to feel no matter how it goes. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful she came the way she did. Um, but another thing is she came the way I wanted her to, but that almost 3 weeks late, as your mom knows, good on you, is doing empath tapping. So if you're an
Yeah.
empath, it is so hard to stay in that place of surrender, trust, peace, hope when no one else is doing the work. Your
Yeah.
your mom, your mom is. My mom was texting so anxious, take Jackie to the hospital, get her induced. This is crazy. Um, my sister was like texting my husband.
Hmm.
I work with so many empaths where they're like, I feel good about it, but the whole world is telling me to fear.
Yeah.
So especially if you're like a spiritual person and you do have faith, and then the world is planting fear at you, it's so good to do some tapping of my feelings, their feelings, my feelings, their feelings, my feelings, their feelings. And maybe that's something we could do at the end since you've taken on so many people's
Yeah.
stuff today.
So
But
yeah. So
that
we
was
yeah.
really powerful at the end is the waiting game. Like my husband and I
Yeah.
had to use like full mental warrior. And it's the tapping something I do with clients, students all the time because it's like we have this mental warrior, we're tapping every day, we're working on birthing our future into the world. And then the world tells us, you can't, who are you? And it's like, whew, it's so easy to take that on when a lot of those fears aren't even ours. Maybe it's
Yeah.
empath, maybe it's not
Yep.
even ours because it's childhood conditioning. It's like, this isn't even mine. It's a 5-year-old version of me. This isn't even mine. It's my scared mom. This isn't even mine. So we can even do that. I didn't have a plan for if we would tap today, but
Yeah, let's do a little tapping on that. And actually, before we do a little tapping, one last thing I wanted to grab that you said in there that was super super
yeah.
useful is the the idea of writing stuff down.
Mm,
That forcing ourselves to give our experience words gives us the ability to tune into them in a different way. Like it's
yes.
different me going, I'm worried, and I am worried because this is going to go wrong and this is going to go wrong. And like the idea of going from an abstract thought to words makes us engage with something in a more concrete way, which gives us more hooks in to be able to recognize the place where the emotion, the overwhelm, that sort of stuff is hanging out inside of that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
So let's do a little tapping. That would be super, super awesome. I'm following your lead.
Okay. Well, I love a prompt, I'm like a generator. I love a prompt. I'm thinking of like in the chat how people are feeling. I'm taking in a lot. Yeah. Okay, okay. Um, let's see. Let's do a little of, not everyone's pregnant, so it might be useful to do like, what are you birthing? So let's
Yeah,
do
that'd be
that.
awesome.
Like anyone who's
Yep.
here, you can even write down something you're birthing and when the due date is. When you want your due date to be. I'll do it too. Because I'm not a tapping script person. I really like to help you tune in kind of with that question tapping. So I love this. I'm going to do it too. Let's have it be embodied. Just write down what you're birthing. Like I'm working on my book. Um, working on my launch. And you can write down like a due date that you want it to be. And just you can even place your hand on your heart with your non-dominant hand. And if it feels good to write, you can write. Or if it feels good to just tune in with my prompts, you can do that. Because how much time do we have, Jean?
3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Then we'll just get into it. So tune in to, you can just rub this sore spot point. It's the same that side of the hand point you've probably been doing. If it feels safe and comforting, you can close your eyes or just keep them open. If it feels good to hold your pen, you can, and just write, how am I feeling about birthing this at that due date? Do I believe, or how do I want to feel as I birth this on the due date? So write down how you feel, and then write down how you want to feel. And then, do you believe it's possible? And let's just do a little tapping to just help separate if any of those feelings or doubts are even yours. That sounds good. And will you be my mirror, my mime when we do?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just like spitballing here. So I'm just tuning in.
Go for it.
I won't even ask what you're birthing. Probably not even. We'll just do the side of the hand. I really want this to come into the world.
I really want this to come into the world.
Yeah. And is there a feeling? Is there any fear? Maybe that would help me. How does it feel thinking of it? Is there any fear, any doubt?
So, and you know, and this could just be a consequence of this particular moment. It feels exhausting.
Okay, I love it.
And if you would have asked me to tune into this on Monday, it would have felt exhausting then as well. So it's not just the consequence of where I am at this moment. I've been up for 36 straight hours.
Yeah, it's exhausting. I'm gonna use that mantra I was sharing. Of course I feel this way.
Of course I feel this way.
I'm allowed to feel this way.
I am allowed to feel this way.
I really want to bring this into the world.
I really want to bring this into the world.
But it feels exhausting.
But it feels exhausting.
Impossible.
Impossible.
And of course I feel this way.
And of course I feel this way.
I'm allowed to feel this way.
I'm allowed to feel this way.
And still bring it into the world.
And still bring it into the world.
Yeah. Let's just tap. You can do one or both sides. Yeah. I want to bring it into the world.
I want to bring it into the world.
Yeah. But it feels exhausting.
But it feels exhausting.
And just think about that date that you really, that due date, you know. Ugh, it feels exhausting.
It feels exhausting.
I don't have to fix this feeling.
I don't have to fix this feeling.
I don't have to do anything with it.
I don't have to do anything with it.
Of course I feel this way.
Of course I feel this way.
And everyone just like, where are you feeling it? Just breathe in. Where are you feeling it? Kind of trace the edges of it. If you are a feeler, maybe it's tracing it and it's like a beach ball size on top of the head. How dense is the feeling? Is there a fear related to it? And is there a fear related to it? I know we have like a minute, but.
So it's really interesting as we have just been acknowledging the sense of exhaustion. What it is it's not the thing, it's the things that's in the way. And as we've been tapping, it's almost like it's had a pointing into a snowplow and the things are just falling to the side out of the way.
Oh, you're visualizing me. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, so it is as much work, but it feels less overwhelming because I'm not pushing through things to get it done.
Pushing. Okay. Oh, let's just do that. So much in the way.
So much in the way.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Just everyone like full, luxurious breath in and out each point. I don't have to do anything with these feelings.
I don't have to do anything with these feelings.
Of course I feel this way.
Of course I feel this way.
Yeah, there is a lot in the way.
There is a lot in the way.
And I don't have to do anything with that right now.
And I don't have to do anything with that right now.
Yeah. Let's just go to that sore spot. It's that inner conflict point, right? You see your snowplow, everything in the way. Notice some of the voices up in the way. Yeah. Yeah, I really want to bring this into the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, it really feels frictionless.
Good, good. And I said the empath one, but I think maybe what we needed was more just like the holding space, the consent.
Hmm.
Like, of course.
Yeah.
So just kind of tune into that part of you and be like, is this even mine?
Is this even mine?
Is it someone else's?
Is it someone else's?
This exhaustion,
This exhaustion,
these obstacles.
these obstacles,
I'm just seeing your mounds of snow. Are they even mine?
are they even mine?
Are they mine to deal with right now?
And it's so funny is they're not snow. They're just giant things of styrofoam that the moment they get hit, there's bing, bing, bing.
Bing, bing, bing. Awesome.
Mm.
Let's just end. We'll just do one
Yep.
last round. So you're so visual. I love it. You can keep seeing that. Everyone just really look at that thing you wrote down. Oh, there are obstacles.
There are obstacles.
Of course there are.
Of course there are.
Yeah. Anything important has obstacles.
Anything important.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it mine to deal with right now?
Is it mine to deal with right now?
Yeah. I'm allowed to feel this way.
I'm allowed to feel this way.
Yeah. 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 I can feel this way and bring it into the world.
I should feel this way and bring it into the world.
Yeah. Just under the arm and back to that sore spot. Kind of rush through that last one and kind of, if it feels good, you can close your eyes with me, or if it feels good, you can look at your paper and just kind of see that feeling, that exhaustion, and just ask, is this me, or is it just a part of me?
Mm-hmm.
Is this me, or is it someone else's? Is this mine, my true self, or just a part of me? So part of being an empath is discerning not only if the obstacles are from you, but if they're put on you from others, or if they're put on you from an inner child. So just take a moment, you can write down, and that's work you can do using all the resources, the beautiful resources you've been given for free from this summit. But maybe it's not your true self's fears and exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's an inner child who's exhausted because it is overwhelming for a 6-year-old or something. So part of being an empath is knowing there's all these children within us, and maybe we're picking up on their feelings a little bit more than someone else might who's not a sensitive soul. So it's like, is this mine? If not, whose is it? Maybe a younger version, maybe someone else's, maybe a parent's. And we have tools to do the work on those things. But I can't wait to see what you birth into the world. I hope the snowplow melted. It's a heated snowplow.
Again, it wasn't real snow, which was the reality of it. It just appeared to be giant obstacles in the way, and that was it.
Yeah.
So awesomeness. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for we managed to have really fun winding conversations that always land in the exact space they're supposed to land.
My ADD brain, I hope everyone heard exactly what they were supposed to hear. Yeah. I think they have the recording. You're a superhero for doing this and bringing so many people together.
Yeah. Awesomeness. Excellent. Thank you very much. If you found this interview inspiring, I would encourage you to support the Peaceful Heart Network by going to 24hoursoftapping.com/support or clicking the link in the description. And you will see on the screen right now a playlist to all of the interviews from this year's and last year's 24 Hours of Tapping. I hope you enjoyed those as well.